To really try and understand the disappearance of Timothy Pitzen, you have to accept that you're stepping into an enigma. I mean, it's built entirely on contradiction.
It is. It's a case that just defies easy answers.
You have this road trip that ends in a suicide, a final note that sounds like an act of love, but
Yeah.
it could just as easily be an act of ultimate cruelty.
And now, 14 years of searching for a 6-year-old boy who might not even be alive.
Let's just lay out the core facts. It's chilling.
6-year-old vanishes after 3-day road trip with mother.
Okay. She's found dead in a motel. Suicide note. He's safe with people who love him. You will never find him. 14 years later, no body, no sightings, no answers, and the timeline is just... it's terrifyingly fast.
It is. It all kicks off on May 11th, 2011. Amy Fry-Pitzen checks her son, Timothy, out of Greenman Elementary in Aurora, Illinois.
Right.
She claims there's a sudden, urgent family emergency. That lie launches this 3-day, 500-mile journey. They go to water parks, the Brookfield Zoo.
Like a mini vacation. Exactly. Yeah. Then, May 13th. Last confirmed sighting. They're together, 10 a.m., checking out of the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells. But by 8 p.m. that same night, Amy is seen on camera, alone. And the next day?
May 14th, just afternoon, a maid finds Amy's body in room 108 of the Rockford Inn Motel. Timothy is just gone.
Gone. And the investigation that follows, it doesn't clarify anything, it just adds more layers of contradiction.
It really does. You have forensic trace evidence that points the search to a very specific type of grassy meadow. Sounds good, right?
Sounds promising.
But that specific type of meadow exists across 6 counties in northwestern Illinois. They've searched, and nothing.
Wow.
Then you have a concerning amount of Timothy's dried blood in the back of her SUV. But, and this is crucial, there was no trace of his blood on the box cutter she used to kill herself.
Okay, that's a huge detail.
It's massive. His Spider-Man backpack, which is this iconic image from the case, is missing. Key electronic data is gone. And then, as if the family hadn't been through enough, this cruel hoax in 2019 just shatters them all over again.
And through it all, his father, Jim Pitzen, believes he's alive. He'd be 19 today.
19.
And that really is the central, just the unbreakable paradox here, isn't it? The only person who knew the truth, Amy, was also the person who planned so meticulously to make sure that truth would vanish with her. So what are we left with? Was this a calculated murder-suicide with a note designed to torture his father forever? Or was it what Jim hopes, a secret, desperate handoff to someone she trusted, maybe even, as some in the family think, a Mormon community?
The truth died with Amy Fry-Pitzen.
Welcome to Whispers of Crime.
Before we get into our analysis, if you want to follow along with this case and others, just make sure you follow Whispers of Crime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Whispers of Crime.
So to really grasp what happened here, we can't just start with the road trip itself. I mean, we have to start with Amy. With her emotional state, her mental state, this wasn't a snap decision.
No, not at all. This was a calculated 3-day extraction that was really rooted in a severe clinical crisis. That psychological context is absolutely everything here.
And she had a documented history, right?
Oh, yeah. A long history of severe clinical depression. It was diagnosed years before she even married Jim Pitzen. And the sources detail 2 previous, and I mean highly severe, suicide attempts. This established a pattern.
What kind of attempts are we talking about?
Well, one time, she parked her vehicle on active train tracks, just sat there waiting.
Wow.
Another time, maybe even more severe, she overdosed on pills, then drove to this steep embankment and either jumped or fell 30 feet.
And she survived that?
She did, but with a fractured vertebra, hypothermia, she had to be hospitalized. These weren't cries for help. These were serious documented crises. It underscores how severe her psychological state was.
And critically, right before this happened in May 2011, she wasn't taking her medication. That just makes everything so much more fragile.
Exactly. She had prescriptions for Ativan, Wellbutrin, Lexapro, a pretty standard cocktail for anxiety and depression. But according to her husband, Jim, in those crucial weeks leading up to the disappearance, she just stopped.
Cold turkey.
Completely. When police searched their home, they found multiple unopened bottles of her meds right there in the medicine cabinet. And stopping a cocktail like that suddenly, it can trigger severe mood destabilization.
And did Jim notice a change?
He did. He described her as having big highs and lows. He said she was acting real funny, becoming extremely emotional, volatile. She was in the middle of an acute, unmedicated, depressive, probably manic episode.
Yeah.
So we have this medically fragile person in a state of severe crisis. Which brings us back to the biggest question, why? Why risk everything, take her son, and go on this very public 3-day road trip? What was the motive that was powerful enough to start this whole catastrophe? The core motive, and this is based on interviews with her family, was just pure existential terror.
Terror of what?
Amy's sister, Cara Jacobs, confirmed it years later. Amy was absolutely terrified of losing custody of Timothy in what she saw as an inevitable device from Jim.
And she knew her history would be used against her.
She knew her psychiatric history. Those documented suicide attempts, the hospitalizations could, and let's be honest, likely would be used against her in family court to strip her of custody. That fear was so profound, it drove her to find what she thought was a permanent solution.
To take Timothy out of the equation entirely. Away from the courts, away from Jim.
Forever.
But what makes this so different from just a desperate parent running away is the planning. There's clear evidence of cold, calculated planning that went back for months.
The planning details they're genuinely chilling. They point directly to premeditation. Investigators got a hold of Amy's iPass records.
That's the little electronic toll device, right?
Right. It automatically pays tolls, but critically, it logs precise GPS data and timestamps for every single highway exit and toll plaza you go through. And those records revealed she had taken 2 secret, unexplained trips to the exact same general area in northwestern Illinois where the whole investigation would later focus.
So she was scouting. When did this happen?
February 18th and again on March 20th, 2011. That's 2 and 3 months before she took Timothy. And she had no family there, no friends, no known ties to the Sterling, Illinois area whatsoever.
So she's vetting a location.
She is absolutely scouting a location. Now, whether that was a quiet handoff point to a secret caregiver or a remote, secluded spot for something else, we don't know. But she was preparing the physical act months in advance.
So this wasn't a breakdown that led to a plan. This was a plan that was executed during a breakdown. That's a perfect way to put it. And the start of it on May 11th was meticulously choreographed. Timothy gets dropped off at Greenman Elementary around 8 a.m. He's got his little Spider-Man backpack.
Right.
Amy checks him out just 15 minutes later. The excuse. A false family emergency. And then she does something brilliant from a tactical point of view. What's that? She immediately drives her Ford Expedition SUV to a repair shop at 10:00 a.m. An employee from the shop then drives her and Timothy to the Brookfield Zoo for the day. They come back at 3 p.m. to pick up the car. Why do that? If you're trying to disappear, why create a paper trail, a record of where your car is, at the very beginning of the trip?
It's a masterstroke of misdirection. It gives her a documented, legitimate reason for the vehicle's location and mileage at the start of everything. If Jim had reported them missing earlier, or if police had started tracking her movements right away, the records would show the car was sitting at a repair shop for 5 hours.
It's a firewall. It covers her initial moves.
It does. It shows an extreme level of forethought about how police investigations actually work. They always start by tracking the vehicle.
And yet, the very next phase of this whole journey, it reads like a picture-perfect, if totally unannounced, vacation. Her actions just seem so inconsistent with a woman planning a final fatal act.
The itinerary was definitely designed for a 6-year-old. The first night, May 11th, they're at the Key Lime Cove Resort in Gurnee, Illinois. The next day, May 12th, they drive 170 miles north into Wisconsin and check into the huge Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells.
This is a fun trip. This is what you do with your kid.
It is. And she made stops along the way, buying things that really complicate the idea of a simple murder-suicide.
What sort of things?
Well, we have surveillance footage and receipts. She bought new clothes for Timothy.
Okay, so that suggests he's going to need it for more than a day.
Right. She also bought a toy car, a craft kit, and this one always gets me, a tube of Kids Crest toothpaste. These are things you buy for a sustained trip, or for starting a new life somewhere else, not for an abrupt, violent ending.
So it puts you in this terrible emotional conflict. You have to wonder, was she creating one last perfect, happy memory for him before whatever came next? It feels like she genuinely wanted him to have this positive final experience.
That's the prevailing psychological analysis. I mean, everyone, friends and family, they all said Amy was just infatuated with Tim. He was the center of her universe.
And the video footage backs that up.
Yep.
It does. The last confirmed video we have is from May 13th, 10:00 a.m., checking out of the Kalahari. The footage shows Amy holding Timothy's hand. She glances down into his famous Spider-Man backpack. Jim Pitzen saw that footage later. He said Timothy looked happy. No signs of distress. Completely unaware of the abyss they were walking toward. That image. A smiling mother, a happy child, a Spider-Man backpack. That's the last time we ever see him. And from the second they leave the Dells, the journey turns south, literally and figuratively, and it veers into the terrifying unknown.
The geographical shift was immediate. After checking out of Kalahari, she didn't head back east towards their home in Aurora. Instead, she drove about 170 miles south on I-39 and I-88, heading right for that Sterling, Illinois area.
Right back to the place she'd scouted.
Exactly. And this is where the trail just starts to fall apart, leading us right into that critical 6-hour window of uncertainty that basically defines this entire case.
Right. The point of no return. Yeah. Between noon and about 1:30 p.m. on May 13th, she makes her final phone calls. She talks to her mother, tells her everything's fine, which we now know was a complete lie. And crucially, she also calls Jim's brother, Chuck. And Timothy was heard on that call.
He was in the background saying he was hungry. Chuck actually got to speak to Tim for a moment, and that is the last confirmed audio contact any family member ever had with that little boy.
And Chuck, obviously knowing Jim is beside himself with worry, he urges her to call her husband, right? What was her response in that final moment?
It was a cold, final declaration of control. When Chuck told her to call Jim, Amy's last words to any family member were sharp, absolute. She said, "Tim is my son, and I can do what I want." And immediately after hanging up, she deliberately turned off her cell phone for the final time. The call was traced to a rural area about 5 miles northwest of Sterling, Illinois, near Route 40. That act, shutting down the phone, it was a meticulous, intentional severing of any electronic tracking. And that's it. That's what kicks off the 6 hours of just total, terrifying silence. She's last heard from near Sterling at 1:30 p.m., but she doesn't pop up again until hours later, and she's alone. From an investigator's perspective, I mean, how do you even begin to account for that huge gap of time? You can't. That's the thing. It can't be accounted for, and it is the single most important window in this whole investigation. She wasn't seen again until 7:25 p.m. She appears, crucially, alone in Winnebago, Illinois, which is about 50 miles away from that Sterling area.
So that 4 to 6 hour gap is everything. It's where the transfer or the abandonment or the concealment of a body must have happened. Everything hinges on what took place in that rural patch of Illinois between 1:30 p.m. and 7:25 p.m. And her actions when she reappears are so mundane, but so revealing of her state of mind, utterly cold and calculated. In Winnebago, she makes her final known purchases. At 7:25 p.m., she's at a family dollar store buying stationery, a pen, note paper, and envelopes, the materials for the suicide notes. Exactly. This was a premeditated purchase. By 8:00 p.m., she's seen at a nearby Sullivan's Foods buying crackers and milk. That purchase has always been debated. Was it for her, a last meal? Or was it a provision for the people she just handed Timothy over to? But she was definitively alone for all of this, just preparing for the end of her own life. Yes, her final destination was the Rockford Inn in Rockford, Illinois. She checked into room 108 somewhere between 11:15 and 11:30 that night, paid cash. The motel manager later confirmed Amy was alone. And then the next afternoon, the devastating discovery. Tell me about that scene, the evidence that was there. And maybe more importantly, what wasn't there. A maid found Amy's body at 12:30 p.m. on May 14th. She had died by cutting her wrists and neck with a box cutter and then overdosing on antihistamines.
Investigators have suggested it was likely a large quantity of children's cough syrup, maybe triaminic, which is just another one of those tragic, awful paradoxes in this case. The room was sealed from the inside, double locked, chain on. She was definitely alone in her final hours.
And what did the police find, or not find, regarding Timothy?
Nothing. Zero trace of him. There was no sign he had ever set foot in room 108. The police confirmed a list of key items that were just gone.
Like what?
Timothy's Spider-Man backpack, the new toys she'd bought him, that tube of Crest toothpaste, her iPass toll device, and even the clothes Amy was wearing when she checked out of the Kalahari. All of it vanished.
But the most enduring piece of evidence, the most cruel piece, was the note itself. She writes, "He's safe with people who love him. You will never find him." How do you even begin to interpret that? Is that a final desperate comfort for her family? Or is it a cold, deliberate weapon aimed right at his father, designed to guarantee a lifetime of searching?
It functions as a psychological trap. I mean, if you take the note as the literal truth, she's secured her son a loving life away from his dad. But she's also guaranteed that his father will never, ever know peace. It's a form of ultimate punishment.
And if it's a lie, a final self-serving deception, then it's maybe even crueler. It means she inflicted the ultimate torture on Jim Pitzen, forcing him to search for a living child who is, in reality, deceased and hidden somewhere out in the Illinois countryside. The ambiguity, That's the source of all the pain that's followed. So we're just forced to look for the truth in the physical evidence she left behind.
Right. And before we get into analyzing that evidence, we need to just take a quick pause.
Don't forget to follow Whispers of Crime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and other podcast platforms for daily updates on every crime, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Whispers of Crime. Like, share this episode with others who might have information about this case and help. Also, comment your suggestions below. Drop your positive review and rating. Okay, so we're returning to the forensic trail that Amy left. And we're shifting focus from that time gap to what was inside her car, because that physical evidence immediately started presenting contradictions.
Yeah, the first piece of physical evidence that just sent up immediate red flags was the discovery of blood. Aurora police confirmed a concerning amount of human blood. It was later identified as Timothy's, found in the backseat of her Ford Expedition.
And when you find a missing child's blood in the mother's car, I mean, that immediately screams trauma, foul play.
It's extremely alarming, of course. But there was an immediate counter-explanation from the family.
Which was?
Jim Pitzen and other family members, they insisted the blood was old. Dried. They said it came from a really severe nosebleed Timothy had in that car maybe 12 to 18 months earlier. And because the blood was dried, investigators couldn't definitively rule that out.
I don't know. It seems unlikely that that much blood would just stay there for a year.
It's highly unusual, but it's not impossible. And that created just enough doubt. But the most critical piece of forensic analysis, the piece that really changes the narrative, came from the weapon itself.
The box cutter.
Exactly. Investigators stress this constantly. The box cutter Amy used to kill herself contained only her blood.
Only her blood. No trace of Timothy's.
None. And that is the absolute cornerstone of the alive theory. It strongly suggests she did not harm him, and she certainly didn't use that knife on him in the moments leading up to her suicide.
So if he was harmed, it wasn't there. It wasn't dead.
Right. It forces the entire focus of the investigation back onto that 4 to 6 hour window in the Sterling area. That's where the event happened, whatever the event was.
So if she didn't kill him at the motel, she had to have stopped somewhere in that window. And that search area was huge. But the investigators used some really incredible science to try and pinpoint that location, right? The microtrace profile.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. The Aurora police knew they needed help, so they turned the dirty SUV over to a private forensics lab called Microtrace. They specialize in this kind of thing. Their job was to analyze every speck of dirt, every piece of plant matter, every mineral clinging to the undercarriage of that car to create an environmental fingerprint of where she stopped.
And what did they find on that microscopic level?
The findings were just extraordinary in their specificity. They painted this vivid picture of a hidden rural spot. The analysis showed the car hadn't just stopped on the side of the road, it had pulled off onto a wide gravel shoulder or turnout.
Okay.
And it was adjacent to an asphalt secondary road. But not just any road, a road that had been treated with glass road marking beads.
So the little reflective things in the paint?
Exactly, and those are only used on certain types of rural or state routes, so that narrows it down immediately.
Wow, so they could tell the type of road she was on.
They could. And even more, the SUV had backed up into a nearly treeless grassy meadow. The grass was uncut, it had field weeds, so that ruled out a park or a residential lawn. They even identified specific plants.
What kind of plants?
Queen Anne's lace and black mustard plants growing in a row near the road. Queen Anne's lace is a common weed, but it's seasonal. It grows in disturbed rural soil, which helped pinpoint the time of year and the type of environment.
Any other traces?
Yeah. They also found mineral evidence of something called anhydrite, which is often associated with gypsum. It suggested the soil was consistent with runoff, maybe a low-lying area. And finally, the profile suggested a strong likelihood of a pond, a small stream, or a creek very close by.
So all of that together gives you this incredibly detailed fingerprint of one specific rural spot. But they still couldn't find it. Why?
And that is the tragic paradox of this kind of specificity. Based on that profile, Microtrace localized the search to northwestern Illinois. Lee and Whiteside counties were the highest probability, but they couldn't rule out 4 other counties. So the evidence created this geographically defined search area of about 6 square miles, spread across 6 counties.
It's specific enough to tell you what to look for, but it's way too big to actually search.
Exactly. She picked a place that was common enough to stay hidden, but just specific enough to leave a perfect forensic trace on her car. It's diabolical, really.
And speaking of hiding things, some of the most crucial clues are the ones that were deliberately made to vanish. The electronic records that could have mapped that exact spot.
Yeah, the failure to get those electronic clues has been just devastating for this case. Her iPass toll device is still missing to this day. If they found that, it would give them her exact road movements, every exit she took, precise timestamps for the entire 500-mile route. It would essentially fill in that critical 4 to 6 hour gap.
If she's already decided to end her own life, why bother making sure that tiny piece of plastic is gone forever?
It speaks directly to her level of premeditation, her determination to make sure the secret of Timothy's location died with her. That iPass was the technological Achilles heel of her plan. It held the definitive, independent timeline. Getting rid of it was a deliberate act of sabotage against the investigation she knew was coming.
And what about her cell phone?
They eventually found it in 2013, just tossed on the side of Route 78, so that confirms she disposed of it. But police reported it yielded no useful evidence, so she either wiped the data or the phone was just too damaged. Either way, her final movements, her final conversations remained her secret.
So the forensics are strong enough to tell us the type of place she stopped, but it's ambiguous enough to fuel two completely opposite theories about what happened to Timothy. We are just locked in this paradox where the evidence supports survival, but it also supports tragedy.
It does. The lack of a body and the careful, deliberate ambiguity of that note, it just makes both the alive and deceased scenarios perpetually plausible. It forces everyone, the family, law enforcement, to just live in this profound uncertainty.
So let's start with the theory that gives everyone hope, the one that drives his father's search, the alive hypothesis.
This theory says that Amy successfully did what she set out to do. She executed the handoff. She placed Timothy with people who would love him and keep him safe, just like the note promised.
And his father, Jim, has never wavered from that belief.
Never. For over a decade, he has maintained this unwavering conviction that his son is alive, that he was given to a third party that Amy trusted. Just this year, on the 13-year anniversary, he released this incredibly moving public message directly to Timothy, telling him he loves him, and the search is still on.
What's the strongest evidence that supports that hope?
Well, the primary pillar is the note itself, the wording. Amy says he is safe and will be well cared for. That suggests she took active steps to secure his future.
Right. Second is that vital forensic finding. No Timothy blood on the suicide weapon. It makes it really unlikely she harmed him, at least not in the motel. And third, all the missing items. The backpack, the toys, the toothpaste. Those suggest provisions, things you'd need for a new life. So they were handed over with the child, not just dumped in the woods somewhere.
That's the theory, to help him transition. And, there is precedent for this. The J.C. Dugard case is often brought up. A child hidden in plain sight for 18 years. It proves that sustained domestic concealment is incredibly difficult, but it is possible.
And there's also a very specific theory about who he might have been given to tied to Amy's religious beliefs.
That's the Mormon conjecture. It provides a really strong secondary motive for a handoff. Amy was a devout convert to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Jim and his family were not Mormon.
Okay, so Jim's mother, Linda Pitzen, and others in the family, they believe that Amy's fear of losing custody was compounded by a spiritual fear, that Jim wouldn't raise Timothy in her faith. The theory is she may have given him to a deeply committed Mormon family, or maybe even a small, isolated commune, the people who love him, to ensure he was raised in her religion, far away from Jim. But despite all that hope, there is the investigative dread. The other theory, the one that focuses on the probability that Amy, in her crisis, in her premeditation, did the final terrible act. The deceased hypothesis, yes, that she eliminated the one thing she feared losing control of, her son. What's the evidence supporting that darker scenario?
First and foremost, the premeditation. Those 2 scouting trips to the Sterling area point to careful planning for a permanent act, and that is far more often associated with finding a remote burial site than it is planning a public handoff.
And the description of that spot, the forensic nexus point, it sounds exactly like a disposal site. The remote meadow, the water source.
It does. The microtrace profile is highly consistent with a covert disposal site chosen for its obscurity, a place where you could act quickly and secretly during that 4 to 6 hour gap.
And if she did kill him, that note, the meaning changes completely. They become something monstrous.
The note's deception becomes the ultimate psychological weapon. If she killed him, then telling Jim he is safe is a conscious, malevolent lie. And the line, "you will never find him," becomes a guarantee of permanent concealment, designed specifically to deny Jim closure and force him to search forever. It's an act of control that lasts long after she's dead.
And we have to consider the missing clothes. Her clothes.
Yes. Amy's clothing from that day is still missing. Investigators think that if she had been involved in disposing of a body, her clothes could have been contaminated with dirt, with plant matter, with evidence from that meadow, so she would have gotten rid of them before checking into the clean environment of the motel. Another intentional act to erase the location.
So the case just stays locked in this paradox. The lack of a body and the clean box cutter fuel the hope, but the premeditation and the forensic profile of the location point to this concealed tragedy.
And for years, that terrible stalemate just persisted, only broken by these cruel false alarms. And the most devastating one of all came 8 years after he vanished.
Let's talk about that. The events of April 2019, when a young man claimed to be Timmothy Pitzen.
It caused a nationwide sensation. This 23-year-old man is found wandering in Newport, Kentucky. He tells authorities that he is the missing Timmothy Pitzen, that he just escaped from 2 kidnappers who'd held him for 7 years. He even gave these vague but specific-sounding details about his captors.
The initial hope for the family, for Jem, it must have been just, overwhelming.
Intensely hopeful, but it was agonizingly short-lived. The FBI fast-tracked DNA testing, and it came back as a conclusive match to someone else. The claim was a cruel hoax.
So who was this person?
His name was Brian Michael Reaney, an ex-convict from Ohio who had just been released from prison less than a month earlier for burglary and vandalism.
How did he know enough about this case to make it even temporarily believable?
When the FBI confronted him, he admitted he'd learned about the disappearance from a 2020 TV special. It gave him just enough public details to craft a plausible story. Reaney had a history of mental health issues, and he told the FBI he just avilled. He wanted to escape his own life and his prison record by becoming someone else.
I can't even imagine the emotional devastation for the Pitzen family. To get that call, to prepare for that reunion, only to have it ripped away and find out it was a cynical lie.
The family's quotes, they just illustrate the profound trauma. Timothy's aunt, Cara, called it devastating. She said it was like reliving that day all over again. His grandmother, Alana, said it was awful, that they were on tenterhooks, hopeful and frightened. It's just been exhausting. They were emotionally hijacked.
And Reaney faced real consequences for that.
He did. He was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for aggravated identity theft. And the prosecution made a point of saying his actions didn't just hurt the family, they diverted significant federal law enforcement resources agents' time, money away from genuine missing children cases.
So despite that trauma, despite the years of nothing, the case is still active.
It is.
Officially active. The FBI and the Aurora Police Department continue to follow up on any tips. They've made it clear they will not close this case until they know what happened to Timothy. And the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they're still focused on the possibility he's alive.
Yes, they continue to put out resources. In May of 2024, NCMEC released a new age progression photo showing what Timothy might look like today at age 19. They're hoping someone, maybe even Timothy himself, might see it and make a connection.
And Jim Pitzen's message to his son continues to be the emotional heart of this whole search.
He released another heartfelt message aimed right at his son. NCMEC shared it. It said, "Dear Tim, the years apart have been hard. I am so looking forward to us being reunited. Till I see you again. Love, Dad."
But the stalemate is still there. The fundamental stalemate persists. The case is, for all practical purposes, unsolvable until one of two things happens. Timothy, now a 19-year-old man, comes forward and identifies himself, or his remains are discovered somewhere in that 6-county area of northwestern Illinois. Without one of those two things, the truth remains locked away with Amy Fry-Pitzen. Timothy Pitzen's disappearance is just one of the most haunting cases of a child vanishing without a trace. We have the forensic map, we have the timeline, and we have the mother's final contradictory words, all ensuring that nobody can ever be certain what happened in that critical 6-hour window. He was last known to be 6 years old, about 4 foot 2 minutes, 50 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. He was wearing green or blue shorts, a brown t-shirt, and carrying that vital missing Spider-Man backpack.
If you have any information at all about Timothy Pitzen or his disappearance, we urge you to call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The number is 1-800-843-5678. Or you can call the Aurora Police Department at 1-630-256-5516. Even the smallest detail related to that area of northwestern Illinois in May of 2011 could be the key.
Don't forget to follow Whispers of Crime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and other podcast platforms for daily updates on every crime, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Whispers of Crime. Like, share this episode with others who might have information about this case, and help. Also comment your suggestions below, drop your positive review and rating.
The investigative stalemate here is really defined by Amy's absolute commitment to permanent secrecy. Consider this final thought. Amy Fry-Pitzen drove hundreds of miles. She committed this final act of either concealment or handoff, and then suicide. Yet her small electronic toll device, the iPass, the one thing that held the precise minute-by-minute record of her entire route, she made sure it was deliberately removed and never found. If she was already going to end her life, why was erasing the record of that one route, the route that could finally identify the handoff spot or the burial site? Why was that so vital to her final plan?
It suggests this ultimate high-stakes commitment to eternal secrecy. And that secrecy is what's still holding the truth captive 14 years later.